Hey there, Dear Tech fam. Welcome to another episode of the Dear Tech podcast. Today we're getting into the human side of our fast paced industry. So I'm sitting down with Arlene Cohen Miller. She is a lawyer turned coach with over 30 years of entrepreneurial experience. And honestly, I thought that this episode is very important because in tech, it's very go, go, go. It's always a deadline. There's always a sprint. There's always a milestone we need to hit. And many times, we kind of leave our mental health by the wayside. And so in this episode, we really get to recognize burnout. We get to look at, the difference between burnout and just being tired, and the how powerful gratitude is, and how to just check in on your mindset, right? We even discuss A/B testing our mindset, energetic boundaries. There's so many different things we go through. And I think the real point is that in an industry that's so cutting edge, that's so in the forefront of the development of the world right now, we often look forward so much that we don't look internally and we don't look at ourselves, and it hurts us and it hurts our families, right? So this episode is a really great place to kind of get the idea of how you can check in with yourself, how you can heal yourself, how you can do better. It was a very interesting conversation. I think Arlene brought a lot of good insight and a lot of good methods to touch base with yourself. So take a look, start checking in with yourself more often. I know how important it is for a lot of us to deliver, but if you're not healthy, you can't deliver well, right? So, and that goes for your body, but also for your mind and your mindset. So, hope you guys enjoyed the episode. I sure enjoyed recording it, and here we go. All right, Arlene, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me here.
Oh, absolutely. So I think our topic today and what you work with is something that is very important in the tech world. It's something that, many people in tech deal with, but I think a lot of people in tech are kind of living in a life of kind of quiet desperation. They don't really outwardly talk about it. It's not something you go to because tech is very competitive. Tech is what, is quote unquote moving the world forward. So people just, they buck up and they just, do it, right? But I don't think that really works long term for people. But before we get into it, I actually want to start by talking about your father. I want to talk about the impact he and his businesses had on you, because your journey to where you are now is very interesting, very probably not very I forget what the word I'm looking for, but not normal for people out there, right? It's very off the beaten path. So let's start there. Tell me about your father and tell me about the impact he had on you.
Um, Great. Well, my father was a really cool guy, and his father and his father's brothers came over from Russia, and so they started into the movie theater business, and they bought these movie theaters, they made them great, and he was a part of that, and I loved it because I got to go to free movies everywhere when I was a kid. We never paid for any of it, and he just decided he wanted to start his own business, and it's called Standard Vendors of Louisville. I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, and so he sold cotton candy, popcorn, candy, everything to movie theaters and schools. It was a small business. He had two drivers, two big trucks, a secretary. He was working with for cell phones. They took their orders over the phone, and I would love to go. I love to go there on the day they pop popcorn. The whole place smelled great, and I'd always talk him into bringing one of these big, huge bags home to share with the family, which he always did. And he was just a really good businessman. He was an entrepreneur. He was his own person. He was straight with his the people that worked for them about what was expected, but he was really kind and considerate. He also had a salesman that went out and talked to people and stuff. It was a different day. It was way before they had all these huge movie theaters and conglomerates and huge businesses that did all this kind of stuff. And so he just really modeled for me what it was like to be an entrepreneur. And I've been an entrepreneur since I was 29. I graduated from law school. I worked for some attorneys for about 3.5 years. And then I decided to open my own business. And I didn't know what the heck I was doing, even though, because I didn't really work his business. I took some orders over the phone, and I went with him a bunch of times when he would drop stuff off, to the different movie theaters. Maybe they bought a cotton candy machine or something, and you just go check and see how they're doing and shaking hands and stuff. But he really modeled the behavior for me. And he he was a practical businessman. Like the first place he had for business, my mother hated it. I loved it. It was this old warehouse place in downtown Louisville. It had one of those old wooden elevators that you had this thing to shut the door. I just thought it was fantastic. I don't know why my mother didn't like it. It wasn't modern enough for her, but he didn't move into buying his own building for his business until he actually had the money for it. And I don't know, he was just a really good role model for that. That wasn't his purpose. He thought I was going to be a stay-at-home mom like my mom was, and that was his ideal for me, to marry a nice man and stay home and raise babies, but I didn't do that. He got over it. But he was definitely a really cool guy and a really great role model for me.
So with that, because when I think of when becoming a lawyer, it's kind of like two jobs, right? In the sense that you're a lawyer, so you're doing the law thing, and then you decide, am I going to work for someone or am I going to have my own business, which is again its own thing. What was the catalyst from going from I want to be a lawyer to being I want to be a lawyer with my own practice? What made you want to get out from the having a boss deal?
It wasn't anything amazing because I was just in the middle of my class of law school in University of Kentucky, and so a lot of times the people that get hired by the big firms and are wanted by even the medium-sized firms. You do law review and you've done all these amazing things, and I was just a normal person, and I really couldn't find an attorney that I wanted to work for that I really liked how they did business, and then the people that I wanted to work for didn't want to hire me, and I'm like, forget it, I'm done. I'm just going to open my own place, then I'll be my own boss. So it really wasn't anything amazing, but I'm so glad I did it because I don't know how I would have been a working mother otherwise, because attorneys' hours tend to be ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah, that absolutely makes sense. Can you tell me about, because so from that point, you started your own business, and you, like you said, you didn't really know what you were doing, and then since then, obviously, now you're coaching, which is also your own business. Can you tell me about some of the skills you learned early on in your law practice that translates to your business today?
Well, I learned organization skills. I learned how to be tough. I'm not always tough. You can't always tell that I'm a marshmallow on the inside, but I knew how to be tough on the outside because, well, but when I went to law school, about a third of my class was women, but it was still the law firms were a lot of them were hiring men more than women. But yeah, so I guess I learned because there was still sexism in my law school from my classmates when I first started. Um, and I was like, so you just had to be tough. And the women that I went to law school with, they were amazing, and they didn't take crap off of anybody. And so, I really had to learn to be tough, and you have to be. My first 12 years of practice, I was a family law practitioner. So that's divorce, dissolution of marriage, child custody, visitation, people at their worst. And a lot of the attorneys, not all of them, just a small minority, the way they handled themselves to get things for their clients, they were very, I don't even have to put, they were just horrible. The way they treated other attorneys and the way that they acted to get what
Sure.
they wanted was just not in the realm of being respectful to other people. So I learned how to handle stuff and how to not to take crap off of other people. And I learned how to organize myself. And it is a skill to know how to, even if you don't know what the law is, how to research it to apply
Mhm.
it in your life. So I didn't have to start from square one from there. So I really, I just really, and that you were taught the Socratic method, which was how to like read something and then apply it to your life or to apply it to else's life in a
Mhm.
way that's going to be beneficial for them. So I haven't really thought of that in many, many years. So I guess that's my best answer for you.
No, that's awesome. And so then from there, what made you want to get into coaching?
Well, it was a long journey. I mean, I had a solo practice in Cleveland. When my son was 9, I sold that and became a partner in a small boutique law firm in Longmont, Colorado, which we sold about 9 years ago. And about 6 or 7 years before we sold the practice, I've always had amazing women in my life. One started her own coaching academy. She was trained, but she just wanted to have something with more heart. And another friend of mine got her master's in like social work and counseling and stuff, and she started her own holistic counseling school for the same reason. Another friend actually was from Australia, went to school in the United States, like was taught meditation and everything, and then So she was running like a certification to be a meditation facilitator, and I was a little bit of a wound up attorney, so it helped to calm me down. I think I have a little bit of the ADD stuff that I passed on to my son, and so that helped as well. And I also just felt initially that these skills that you're learning as a coach and as a counselor um, would really apply to the law. I wasn't initially saying I was going to go to something else, but and you're not taught how to really listen in law school. You're taught how to win. And it's really, and I was someone that negotiated settlements and was helping to market the second law firm I was a partner in. So listening skills are really important. And I thought I was doing a good job, but I wasn't. So that's the main reason I did. I just thought it would, and I thought I'd be a better mom, a better partner, a better employer. I just thought it would help round up my education. And then I just realized maybe that like some people in tech too, that I mean, I did it for 30 years, 30 plus years. I was just burned out. I'm like, because you can't, like tech, if you're a lawyer, I would go on a business trip, we would go on a vacation. It never friggin' leaves you. We would go, and you have to work your butt off before you go, work really hard but, I can set my schedule. I can block off times and say, I'm going to Australia, which I do once a year. Because I have friends over there that are like my family. So yeah, I just decided that I loved it. I was loving it more than law at that point. I was really, I'd done everything that I could do in the law, and I was just ready for a change.
Yeah, no, I can empathize with that. That sounds. I mean, I think a lot of people, even people in tech. I was having conversations with a few friends, and it's like, in tech, a lot of times, what he said exactly was, I'm tired of having homework. It's like, I do my job, but then I have to think about what I'm doing next month. I have to plan the next 6 months, and I'm consistently doing homework, right? So I totally understand that burnout. So let's jump into the idea of burnout. I think when if and when you come across, let's say, someone in tech, I'll use an engineer for an example, who has been running on like a 24-hour schedule, just go 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 go. What's the first step for you or for them to like realize to take a deep breath and take a minute? Because many times we can't see the forest through the trees. It's very much the next project, the next goal, the next release, whatever it may be, right? So what's that first step to, you know, at least for me, the idea is just let's take a minute,
Yes,
right?
that's an excellent first step, and you really have to be aware that you're on the edge and that you need to do something different, or you might have a meltdown. And or it just you might get ill, or you're not, whatever's going to happen, your body's going to do something. Probably mine did. I was getting headaches and all sorts of different things going on, and so you really have to just sit back first and acknowledge there's something. The way I'm living my life is not sustainable. What I was doing in my 30s and my 40s is just not sustainable now, or whatever it is for you. I mean, maybe it comes earlier because of the schedule and what you're talking about, that it's not just the work thing. You're always having to learn and prepare for the next wave of IT that's coming out, and it's never ending. And then people don't even understand, and they're asking you to do things that aren't even possible now, and you have to explain to them because they're a bunch of idiots and they don't want to listen to you. I have talked to other tech people before. You're not the first. So yes, I do breath work, and it is really simple. You just, or just even when you breathe in through your nose and out through your nose, and the out breath is longer than the in breath. And maybe you can do it while someone's going blah 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 at you. That takes you from that hyper wound up place to more like a rest and relaxed state. So breath work you can do anywhere. We have to breathe to live. So that's always a good first step.
Yeah. No, I think many times the things that we see as involuntary, right? Like breathing, if we put some intention into it, it usually helps. At least that's what I've seen. But when we look at, so for me, I think I'm thinking of um, the thing with burnout is, and you mentioned earlier, like before you get to burnout, like being aware of it, but many times it sneaks up on you, right? What's the best way, would you say? And I'm kind of putting you on the spot. What's the best way you would say that like see the foreshadowing for someone that's not conscious of their insides, right? Because
Right.
many times when you're about mental health, right? And so I'm someone who I keep pulses of how I'm feeling. I do like internal checks. Many people don't. Most people don't, frankly, right? How do we start that introspection, but how do we also see these things coming?
Well, I sort of okay, I'm a little bit out there, but I just like I ask the universe, please show me, when when my inner critic is in full gear. Please show me when my body needs a rest. Help me to become aware of that. Because what I was found that I was doing as a young attorney, I would come in and I'd do a whole bunch of stuff and it'd be like things done and yes, great job. And then my body would go, we need a break, and I always had I was always like I was never in the city. I was always like in the suburb that I could go out and take a walk around the block or something. And I would ignore it until I really just was ready to blow a fuse. And so we can ask either maybe we have a buddy that we're going to work with so then we're not so stressed out. We keep tabs on each other, or we just say, please show me, when I am talking to myself in a way that's not kind. I want to be aware. Please show me when my body needs a break. And it doesn't have to be that big of a deal. But when we walk away from that computer, which I like to keep, I buy these things that my computer can go on to minimize the EMF so I'm not totally bombarded all the time, or surround myself with like salt lamps and stuff like that, which helps as well to do it energetically. But if we take 15 minutes and we walk around the block or we breathe some fresh air or we have a cup of tea, or whatever it is that you do just to chill out and get away from all of that for a few minutes, we're going to come back. We're going to be more productive and we're not going to be just, like staring. Because I've talked to some IT people, they might never leave their computer, but they have moments when they're just staring at it for half an hour and nothing is happening.
Hmm.
So might as well give yourself that break that your body, your soul, all of you needs, and then come back. You're going to be a lot more productive and a lot happier.
Yeah, I know a lot of people that started adding adding in their calendars like breaks. So it'd be like 15 minutes to take, like you said, take a walk, or even I had a friend who prior to this would have 2 cups of coffee, and he would and there's the ember mug. So instead of going up to make the second cup, the 2 cups would be there. So he stopped doing that and he started taking 15 minutes to make his coffee and like kind of just breathe and take their time. So that's for sure. One other thing that I used to do was I used to block off my morning. So like an hour in the morning or 30 minutes in the morning for myself, right? So what I'm asking about is kind of like morning rituals, because a lot of times, again, like intention, for me, intention is one of the biggest things. It's just, I think if you're intentional about your life will end up the way you want it as opposed to just happening to you. So when it comes to morning rituals, rather than waking up and just starting the day as your calendar says, could you tell us like maybe some uh, beneficial things one can do as they're starting their day?
Yeah, I mean, I live that. I get up early, which is not this not my, but I feel so much better. If I get at 5:30, 6 o'clock, and I spend an hour and a half, um, just for me. I might do meditation, I might do breath work. I do meditation, I do breath work, I do relaxation techniques, just things to take care of myself. That if I leave it later in the day, it's just not going to happen. Some of my friends will get out there and walk or run. My body's like, can't do the running anymore. So I usually get out there and do the yoga sometime during the day. But so basically what I do is in the morning, I get up and do my like rituals with the meditation, the breath work and relaxation techniques. And just working with positivity and letting go of, I call it feeling is healing, letting go of anything that's not working and bringing in more love and gratitude, working with gratitude a lot so that I start and end my day really feeling things that I'm grateful for. Because we all have shit going on. We all have a lot of stuff that's happening in life. We all have challenges and we have a choice. Are we going to like be a victim or just complain all the time about everything's going wrong? It's not going to change anything. Or find and focus on the things we're grateful for without ignoring our feelings. I do things working with the inner child stuff where if I feel really upset or angry about stuff, I might turn around because that's a part of me as a child or a teenager that I've neglected or abandoned, betrayed, or something happened because she was really sensitive and I didn't know, couldn't really handle it back then. And I turn around and I hug her and I love her and tell her, I'm sorry, I'm the adult here now. Everything you're feeling is not your responsibility, it's mine. So, and I really work with the inner coach a lot. If I feel myself going blah, 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 I don't do it as much as I used to, but I buckle her up in the back seat. And, as we know how to champion and support and help other people. So I have been practicing for a very long time of turning around and championing and supporting and doing that for myself. So some of the things that I do morning, and sometimes it's just when it comes up, but always in the evening, I'll end with some quiet time and some gratitude, even if it's just a couple minutes to really feel into something I can write in a journal that I'm grateful for that day.
So I want to jump into gratitude because gratitude, if I was going to say like if there's anything that is quote unquote my thing, it's gratitude. I think it's truly something that after I adopted it, things just go better for me, right? But so the one thing that I wanted to get into because you mentioned, feeling your feelings, like still feeling your feelings, but also being towards gratitude. So I kind of fell into a trap, I would say like last year of kind of going too much into the feeling my feelings. So I was, I understand, respect, and believe that my feelings are valid. That's fine. But I think just because they're valid doesn't mean you need to like live in them. So I was kind of going through a rough patch and I was letting myself feel my feelings, in my opinion, too much. And I was just in it. And then because before that, I was Captain Gratitude all the time. Like one time my car got towed. I thought it was stolen. And I'll never forget it. I was on the phone with a friend. I was like, oh, my car got stolen. Okay, well, like it's probably for the best. I needed a new car anyway. Insurance will cover it. Like that was and now I look back to it, especially during that time of feeling my feelings. I was like, that's insane. Mind you, I'm glad that like I loved that thought process. It really is good. But when you're not in a gratitude mindset, it sounds crazy, right? So what I'm getting to is when it comes to gratitude, was for someone that's not familiar with the idea of living in gratitude, because I genuinely think no matter what's happening to you or no matter what's happening, if you stay in a point of gratitude, you'll always figure a way out, right? You're not stuck where you are. So, with that being said, with someone that's not familiar with gratitude, because again, a lot of these things that we're discussing right now, if you're not someone who has studied about it or read about it or really about the self help, getting better type of life, and many people in tech, frankly, are in what they're in. They're doing their AI, they're doing their JavaScript, they're doing their coding, and looking up isn't always an option. So, for someone coming from that mindset of not knowing how to live in gratitude, what are some steps, or what's the first step in getting that mindset?
Well, do you want me to talk about the feeling is healing stuff too? So to help people so they don't fall into their feelings first, because
Sure,
that's another area of my expertise.
sure, absolutely.
Um, so all we have to do is feel our feelings for a second to let them go. And the state we're in when we're feeling our feelings can be that gratitude state. And the way that we can get there, one really simple way is like I visualize that I'm a tree. So from my heart center, my high heart, there's this column of light going down my legs, out my feet, roots of light grounding myself into the planet so that I'm not because otherwise it's like emotionally I'm over here, mentally I'm over here, I'm not all together. So it helps pull us all together. And then once we're in that place, and we can work with gratitude. And so people always feel one misnomer is that I have to wait for something to be grateful for. That's not true at all. Of course, you know that. But we can start with the foundations in our life. When we get up in the morning, are we grateful for that we had a comfortable bed to sleep in? Are we grateful for that we can brush our teeth and we have running water, we can take a hot shower? Are we grateful for that there's food in the fridge and in the pantry, and we can, or we can go out to lunch with our friends? Whatever it is, we can start with those. We don't have to go with a big long list because then we get in our head and not our hearts. Just pick one. And so if we're having a lot of difficult feelings where we're nervous, afraid, anxious, it's like that kid inside of ourselves. We're going to get bigger than them because like they're the kids that got stuck. They're the teenager that got stuck. Um, and we're going to be bigger than them. And so gratitude helps us to expand out. So all we have to do is really ponder and feel one thing we're grateful for. It might be we're driving and no one will let us in to traffic. We have to turn, and there's some nice guy or lady, and they just pause and let us in. And those moments can be really special after COVID. It's like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. So all those little things can help us because gratitude is such a high vibration. It just helps us to expand out. And we're just holding and feeling whatever we're feeling, and then we're just letting it go. And the problem is that people stay with it too long. You only have to feel feelings for a second. And the second thing is that when we let go of feelings that are about fear, we have to fill ourselves with love and light. So all we have to do is just visualize and call forth love and light to fill ourselves when we let go of something that we're afraid of and just sort of feel that happening. And maybe this feels a little bit woo-woo to your people, but what I would say is if you get one thing out of what I'm sharing and you try it and you practice it because practice makes permanent, just see if you feel different in your life. You don't have to take all of this stuff on board.
Yeah. Well, I'll say to the listeners, for people who are very technical and people that are very, quantitative, I'll say that you're more productive from a gratitude mindset. That's as simple as we can put it. Like if you want to look at your work and you just want to see what works, put yourself in a gratitude mindset. Think about things like before you start working, remind yourself what you're grateful for. Start working. And if you do the flip side, because we know they love doing A/B testing. The next day, before you start working, list out what you're stressed out about and start working, and just see which day goes easier. And it's that simple, right? It's really that simple. Because for me, what it comes down to is if I am grateful, and it's kind of like the idea that weeds will grow on a garden when you do nothing, absolutely nothing, and you'll have just a bunch of weeds. And
Yeah.
when you're tending a rose garden, you got to be very careful and very intentional. So the thought is, if you put a negative thought in your brain, it'll run and it'll keep running without. If you do no intervention, that's all you're thinking about. But if you do gratitude, in my mind, when I do something gratitude oriented, it doesn't, not that, and it would be great if it just kept running. But what it actually does is it kind of silences my mind. It's like, oh, that's nice, and then it's silent, right? Because it's not a weed, it doesn't grow, it doesn't keep going. It's just like, okay, that's nice, and then you get into your work and it's just less noise, right? Because I'll never forget, for me at least, when I'm doing my morning, meditation, prayer, affirmations, whatever. If I'm stressed about something, it'll just run and run until I consciously say, all right, either I'll be like, I have dealt with this, I will deal with this, or I don't need to deal with this. I have to say these things to myself, and then I can move on. Whereas a good thought will come, it'll be nice, and then silence. Anyway, all right, I digress. Well,
Can I share one more thing? Because it's a
sure,
statistic. And so
sure.
people that are like, everything organized, they did a study a while back and they had three groups of people. One group was the gratitude group. Twice, 2 or 3 times a week, they'd write in their journal a couple of things that they're really grateful for. That's it. The second group was a neutral group. And in their journals, they would write neutral things. I went to the grocery store, I drove my car, blah, blah, blah. The third group was the complainers and the negative group. And they would write down everything that was upsetting to them and pissed them off in their life. The neutral and the negative group, no upward mobility. 6 weeks of doing it, entering into their journals 2 or 3 times a week at the most, not taking a lot of time, just something they're grateful for. A 25% increase, I can say this, in positivity. This was like an actual study. I used to remember who did it, but right at the moment I'm not. But I'm like, wow.
Mhm.
If someone needs some proof, there you got it.
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, even before we getting going back into the gratitude part, I think one thing that people forget about journaling is super useful. Just as well, one is, if even if we take out the happiness quotient, if we just say, in 5 years, when you look back, if you read a journal, you can see what your life was doing, and it's really, really gratifying to be like, oh, I was this going through this, And I'm not the best journaler, but I did find one of my older journals, and I was writing like I think twice a week max. It was very spread out, but I could see certain things. I'm like, oh wow, I forgot that I went through this at that time, which was interesting to me. Um, so journaling is absolutely awesome. But yeah, being in that mindset of positivity, you'll definitely be. I mean, it's almost when we say it out loud, even if you don't, if you don't think about it often. If you write good things, you'll be happy. Oh, who would have thought, right? um, but actually, so I want to do one thing. So we talked about burnout a little bit earlier. Can we distinguish, because I think we use words in today's society, words like burnout or even depressed or anxious. We use these terms that can be clinical, and we use them very la-di-da. Oh, I'm so depressed. No, you're not. You're sad. You had a bad day, right? These things, and even like I'll hear children today. They'll be like, "Oh, I'm depressed." It's like, no, you're not. Let's distinguish these things from the beginning. So, can you please help me distinguish I'm tired from burnout? Like, because there is a distinction. There is a difference between, oh, I'm really tired, or I've had a long week, versus I am burnt out, right? And not doing that, I think, is very important, because then you'll be burned out because you're telling yourself you're burnt out.
Right. I agree with you. I don't know if I'm a great definition person, but I'll give it to you in the best way that I can. So if I'm tired, it's like, well, if I only been getting 3 or 4 hours of sleep, have I been sleeping like not deeply? Um, does my body feel like it's just a bowl of jelly where I can go sit on the couch and do nothing? Those kind of things might be included if you're burnout, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you are burnt out. I think we need to step back if we're feeling tired and like lethargic and depressed or whatever those other things are. Well, how have I been treating myself? Have I've been feeding myself good foods, or have I been feeding myself a ton of sugar? Which can really wreak havoc on your system. Have I been getting enough sleep, or have I been saying I'm going to go to bed by 11 o'clock, but I'm staying up to 1 in the morning? Just as a night owl. That one. So all those little things that we could be doing that we're tired and we just can't handle things can be remedied if we take a look at what we're putting into our bodies, whether we're doing any exercise or not, how we're treating ourselves and how we're talking to ourselves. And if we really begin to change just even one of those, how we feel about ourselves and how we feel about our world and what we're able to do can start to shift. We can start to turn that ship around. And if we're really burnt out, it's a different state. It's like you're almost immobilized. You really you need to talk to a counselor, a psychologist, or someone that can really help you to unpack what's going, or even a coach. We just deal with the present to the future. What's going on that I need to let go of that's not working in my life. It goes much, much deeper.
Sure.
And yeah, I don't know if I'm not a psychologist by trade. I just took one holistic counseling course in Australia, can't practice it here. So I'm not an expert, but I think if people really are, there's a spectrum. And
Yeah.
so at one point, the spectrum starts to go towards burnout and then it really hits burnout. So one end of the spectrum, I'm just really tired and I need to take better care of myself at all these levels. And then all these other things happen that impact. And then you get to a point that it's much more immobilized.
Yeah, I think when I think of it, it's because I think in the United States, a lot of us live for the weekend, right? That's fairly normal. But I think the difference is like how desperately are you living for the weekend, and how bad are your Sunday scaries? Because I'll never forget at my last role, I rarely had Sunday scaries. I was very much excited for Monday, and that's a sign of like the other side of the spectrum of, oh, my job's great, right? But there's that middle part where some people are, and I want to get into the distinction as well, but there's like the numb part, right? Where you're like, like whatever, and it's fine, and you're not burned out because you don't care, right? Which is also not good. But I think people that are heading towards burnout, they're desperately like Friday, like if Friday's ending and you can feel like an insane amount of dopamine and gratitude. Gratitude's great, but if you're like grasping for that weekend, then you might be heading towards burnout, because the weekend should be a reprieve, but it shouldn't be like a lifeline, right? Because then your week's really bad. And who wants to live, 5 out of 7 days in misery? So I think for me, that's like one of the bigger things is like, how desperately are you clinging to that? But going back to what I just said about being numb and burnout, if you can think of it, could you tell me? I kind of want to go through like contrasting views of people you may have worked with. Obviously, no names, but people that you've worked with. One being in the maybe physical wall burnout state, and another one that was kind of numb. And like, what signs did each of them ignore? Because I feel like it could be similar, but it could be very different. Again, because when you're numb, you don't realize that that's a negative state. Some people are very fine with status quo and just keep on keeping on, which is again, it's okay, but it's not ideal.
Right.
Um, so if you have any people that come to mind, maybe one that was heading towards burnout, one that was just living in that numb status quo, and what signs do they ignore on their path?
Well, usually by the time they get to a coach, or they're pretty far down the track, people, their friends or their spouse or their girlfriend or boyfriend or the significant people in your life are saying something's up. You're not the same as you used to be. And so, sometimes people have come in and they really can tell that something's going on. Sometimes there's someone that they really care about to sort of push them into there because the relationship is sort of going down the tubes because they're just so stressed out and nervous and anxious and all that kind of stuff all the time, and they're not willing to do the fun things that they used to do together. So I think it varies from individual to individual, but I feel like when someone's really at burnout, they actually are feeling their feelings, but they aren't doing anything about taking care of themselves so that they can get out of it. They don't know how they don't know how to break that cycle. And I
Mm-hmm.
guess that's what a counselor or a psychologist or a coach or a mentor, I'm a coach and a mentor, can do is we can um, reflect back and share, what we're seeing so the person can become aware. So to answer your question, if someone's really in burnout, usually there's a lot more physical, emotional, mental manifestations that are going on their life. If someone's in numb, which I was for years, because I was you know, nothing really bad happened in my childhood except I was so sensitive that I sort of shut my heart down, and then it was easier not to feel because then someone could mow me over and I wouldn't be have to deal with it. I didn't know how to deal with it when I was a kid. And so when you're numb, what there is there's this underlying fear or terror of feeling your feelings. So they might come in really flat and just be okay and smiling and everything's fine. And you're like, well, why are you here? Until you really, until they trust you enough to open up to share some of the feelings they have or share some of the experiences that they're having so they can acknowledge them and begin to feel how it's impacting them and how it's not helpful in their life so they can begin to make some at least some small changes to begin with because sometimes we make a really small change and it can make a big difference.
Mhm. Absolutely. I mean, everything starts with a small change. And I think at the end of the day, it just is do something. Cause what is it? Step to a million miles is, path to a million miles starts with one step. I don't know, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
And so from that thought process, I want to kind of ease us kind of into energy leaks and boundaries. And the reason I'm taking it from there is I feel like a lot of on the path to burnout, and I'm really going to call it a path to burnout because you were right when you said it's a spectrum, and you have a chance to take a U-turn at every step. But on the path to burnout, I feel like you let your energy leak because you're not aware of where your energy is going and you're just moving, and you let people cross boundaries because you're not willing to say no because you're just not aware. So can you kind of dived a little bit into energy leaks and burnout, and then how to see it coming, see it when it's there, and you know correct that issue.
So energy healing and that kind of stuff is part of my area of expertise. I'll give a few general things that people can start off with. Um, so anytime we're interacting with anybody, someone thinks about you, you think about them, an energetic connection is established. So I just, every day I cut cords. So I might just envision a golden cylinder coming down around my bodies. Ask it to cut any cords that aren't about love and leave the loving ones there. Because otherwise, we're having a great conversation now. Maybe 2 hours later, someone says something totally triggers you. You have this big reaction. I'll feel your stuff. I'll think it's mine and wonder why all of a sudden I feel horrible or anyone can do that to us. So it's really important, even with the people that we love, just to generally cut those cords every day. We don't have to know who it is, but otherwise we're going to be impacted by other people. And even good-hearted people have bad moments. We might be good-hearted people here, but you can't tell me there's a moment in a day that someone just knows how to push that button. Maybe they just barge right in there. They don't. Why do people use turn signals? That's one thing that bothers me. Turn on your turn signal so I know you're going to turn. Anyway, little things like that, we might have a reaction and then so that's why I like to cut cords because I don't want to impact anybody else and they don't have to impact me. Just that golden cylinder, I'm cutting energetic connections that aren't about love. I mean, another thing that we can do with boundaries is, it's important to energetically protect ourselves. So I just put this nice big golden bubble around myself. I'm only open to love within it. Anything else is bouncing back because, and then I flood that. I call forth light and love to flood my golden bubble of protection because when we let go of fear, like you were talking about, you were diving too deep in fears, you're letting that stuff go. It's important to flood and fill ourselves up with light and love, or the fear is going to come right back in. So, a lot of what we feel, if we're not doing clearing and protection for ourselves, is stuff we've accumulated over a lifetime. We might be connected to our second grade teacher, so it's really important to cut those cords, to put that bubble around us. And another thing I do, um, um, I have a friend that's a massage therapist. I say it a little bit different, but I love the way he says it because it's so grounded. He goes, "What's mine is mine. What is yours is yours." And he sends, because he's massaging people all day. They're letting go all their stuff in this room, and yet, so he's just sending it back to them. So any energy that's not about me, that's not mine, it's not about love, I'm sending it right back to you. So that I'm not, if someone has dumped on me, either energetically or with their words, whether it's someone you're dealing with, through a computer, it doesn't matter. It's not my stuff. I can't clear it anyway. I'm going to send it back to you. Um, because that is actually the kind thing that you do, because then they can deal with it. They can let it go. They can bring more love in, but it's just going to fester in my body. I can't do anything with stuff that's not my stuff. So energetically,
Yeah.
those few things that I would recommend that you try. Um, it it's made a huge difference in my life because I just was taking on things from everybody and thinking it was my stuff and thinking there was something really wrong with me. And it was just that I was dragging around a bunch of stuff from other people and groups.
Yeah. And it's very interesting because that it makes sense absolutely from like a metaphysical perspective, but even on like a one-to-one interaction perspective, when someone's like trauma dumping on you or something, it's very healthy to say, hey, like actually say, right? Like that's like, I appreciate, you wanting to share and everything, but like, I can't deal with that right now. And actually like telling, cause we have, cause the things about energies affecting us makes sense 100%, but sometimes people actually come and really dump on you and really put that in your face. And I've had to tell some people that be like, hey, listen, like I totally get that, but like that's a very much, and not in a rude way, but that's very much a you problem and I can't even help. So I can't deal with it right now, right? Things
Mhm.
like that absolutely, make sense. And it's not always easy to say. Very much an energy perspective, we can do that because that's us doing it to the universe. But in a one-to-one perspective, it's very important to make those lines as well. Um, and okay, and so I'm switching gears because there's so much to cover, and it's very very interesting.
Well,
Can you
yeah,
actually?
you don't get to everything.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. And so, but I want to hit another side of this. I'll call it like workplace anxiety spectrum. A lot of people deal with imposter syndrome, and even people that are tenured professionals that have been doing things a long time. As soon as there's something new that you're getting into, imposter syndrome is probably like the most relatable feeling ever. Right? Everyone's felt it. I'm sure when you started your law practice, you might have felt it, or when you started your coaching, you may have felt it. And whenever something comes along, right? I felt it when I started my podcast. I felt it when I had a new job. It happens all the time. How are some ways to correct that feeling, or how to combat that feeling of imposter syndrome?
Well, I guess one of them is just to focus on, the presence that I'm holding, with gratitude. You know, and it's important not to be an island, not to be like a lone wolf trying to fix yourself. I found that I've joined, and I'm like a part of a mentoring group with women. And I wish I'd had something like that. Well, I did, like, actually, when I was younger, I did have a small mentoring group. There's 4 women, and it wasn't work related, but it's just like when you come together, I call come together with like-minded souls, and you're there to lift each other up and to support each other so that that the problems you're facing, that you're not alone, and that you can share and they can share, and we can help to lift each other up. And also, we need to like get a mentor in our own industry, someone that can help to guide us, or just another friend, that's another solo practitioner like me that I can call up and say, have you had this situation with this attorney? Are they just being a jerk to me, or were they a jerk to you too? So it's important not to try to do it alone. Find, mentoring groups, find mastermind groups, find people that um, sometimes it's just as simple as, like, out in Colorado, everyone's pretty athletic. Find a hiking group. There's a I forget what they call them. It's women over 55 who go hiking together, or maybe it's over 40, but there's mountains everywhere. And so you're not, maybe you just have some casual conversation, but you're doing something that you love with a group of other people that like to do the same thing. If we have outlets like that, then a lot of that stuff can begin to drop away because we can focus on the things we're excellent at, or at least giving it a go, and then, begin to bring that back in. And it just takes time. I mean, oh my gosh, when I was a young attorney, the outfits I wore, it looked like a a female version of a man's suit, because I looked like I was about 19 or 18 when I was 25 and graduated from law school. So yeah, I know what that feels like. It's not a fun feeling, and some things just take time.
Yeah. So mentorship, I think, is the most underrated thing that is out there to make you successful. And I think it's something that everyone's, we hear the word, but I think the depth of what it can mean to a professional in any field is not always highlighted, because I think, I was told very young in my life that if there's something that you want, find someone that has it and ask them how, right? That's the easiest way to get what you want in anything. And that translates over and over. Like as life goes on, you'll find people that will be willing to spend that time. Again, you have to be respectful with your time, but that's how one grows. And I think, it's imposter syndrome 100%, because the person that's already there will look at you and say, "Hey, I was exactly where you were. I did exactly what you did." And that is such a great feeling. One wouldn't think it would be as deep as it is, but it is. And I think that I'm really glad you highlighted mentorship, because whenever it comes up in any of my episodes, I love diving into it, because I think, again, it's a really a good way to walk a path that's been walked and be very quote unquote safe in your approach to success. Because again, success is objective success. It's not easy. We have to, people we meet a lot of successful people, but no one sees the work that goes on with it. And I think
Right.
mentorship allows you to see behind that curtain, which is very important. And I think the other thing is, when you see these mentors who've done what you did, and you're in that imposter syndrome space, you realize, like, for one of my the sayings that I continuously say in my head is, action cures fear. And when you see what they've done, it tells you to act, right? You see what they've done, even if you feel stuck, even if you feel in an imposter syndrome state, you're like, okay, well, I have to do what they did, so I have to do something, so I have to move. And as soon as you start doing that imposter syndrome melts away, because you get a win, and then you get another win, and then you get another win, and it's wonderful. And I think it's just that's the problem, is that fear is paralyzing, and imposter syndrome, in my opinion, is the type of fear, and that space between fear and action seems like a chasm sometimes. So having that guide is wonderful. All right, and so let's jump towards. I'm going to jump towards. Okay, so I'm going to jump towards what I call the FAQs. So this is heading towards wrapping up the episode. So FAQs, I call them frequently asked questions. The joke is that they're not frequent. Everyone gets their own questions. They're not the same. Some of them are, but generally they're not. You mentioned hiking. Can you tell me your favorite Colorado trail, or the favorite place in Colorado that you like to do your hikes?
Oh, I don't know the name of the trail. I just like to drive up to Rocky Mountain National Park sometimes, and
Yeah,
sometimes go through the paying thing, and sometimes I'll just stop off early and pick a trail, because as you go up the mountains, there's so many.
sure.
So I'm not really good at remembering names. Rocky Mountain National Park is just an amazing park. You can
Yeah.
get that everyone goes on or no one goes on, and I mean, you can't miss. And they have like an information center if you want to go there and look at the trail map. I'm not really good at reading maps. I just sort of drive and stop.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, my friends love hiking. I am not the biggest hiker, but I'm coming around to it. More so because I'm lazy. I'm the person that likes to sleep in, and my friends love sunrises. So we're up at 5:30 in the morning. We went to Yosemite, up at 5:30 in the morning to get a sunrise. Beautiful, but anyway, I digress. What is? Tell me about a soundtrack or a movie that instantly lifts your mood.
When Harry Met Sally, when we're in that restaurant.
Great film. Great. That's one of the best scenes of all time.
I know, and his mother was in the picture. She's the one that went.
I'll
Harry's
have
mother.
whatever she's.
I'll subject more of that.
I love that.
Yeah.
Great film. All right. What's the first thing you do when you feel stressed out, or stress is creeping in? It's right there at the cusp.
The first thing, if I have the time, because lots of times I work from home, I'll just shut my computer and I'll go out for at least a walk around the block. I can walk down to a park down the street. I can breathe. That's usually what I want to do. Just get away from my computer. Unless
Sure.
it's like it's really, horrible Colorado weather and it's freezing and it's snowing out, which is not now. Just that little bit of fresh air. Maybe the people out, you can say hello to them and they're walking their dogs, and you just sort of let go of everything, and then you can come back.
Awesome. What is a book that you gift most, or your favorite book?
I don't have a favorite book. I just read Richard Bach's book called Illusions. I love Richard Bach. He writes really short books, but they're kind of metaphysical, but they're really informative and they're really uplifting and they're really interesting. And so I just reread one of that, and I guess that's the one because I haven't been reading that much and can't even talk recently because I just had so much on my plate.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. But all right, what is a belief about work-life balance that people still get wrong?
That there is a perfect place of balance, which is like it just, and that's why I added harmony in there because there is no such thing.
Hmm.
We're all works in progress. There's no such thing as being perfect. If something really worked one day, the next day cannot work at all because there's a whole bunch of other different factors that are involved. So we really need to be flexible and adaptable.
Yeah, I agree. I think people that understand quote unquote work life balance always pick a new word. So for me, for years, the word was rhythm. I'm looking for my rhythm because it's not going to be balanced. Just some days you're going to do more and less. So harmony is an absolutely beautiful word for that. Um, is there an app or a tool that you use to keep yourself centered on hectic days?
I'm beginning to work with Pipe Drive. I had lots and lots of resistance to it.
Okay.
Just to do things in market more. Um, I'm not a big technology buff, you know. I wish what I'd like to be is really rich and be everyone to do all my technology stuff. But so great to know people in your field. But so yeah, I did purchase Pipe Drive. It does help to, work with marketing and stuff like that. And that's the one tool I'm working with. And that was a big leap. I bought it and I actually let it sit for a couple months and I'm like, I'm gonna do this because it's outside my frame of comfort.
Hmm. Yeah, but that happens with. I mean, even people that are familiar with tech with new tools, it's always like that. Like I remember, I got a couple of new tools, and again, I was paying for them. Sat there, I was like, I'll get to it, right? All right, and then what is something? This is actually one of my this, and then a couple more, and then we'll start wrapping up. But this is one of my favorite questions I ask because you might not have an answer for it. So just if you don't, it's fine. But what's something you changed your mind about recently?
Changed my mind about. Um, wow. I don't know if I changed my mind, but I'm just really focusing on because there's just so much, there's a lot, the energy out in the world today is pretty dense and heavy and hectic. And so, it's really easy for the blah, 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 and what someone said or did to go on. And I'm just really, not that I've changed my mind, it's just a really big focus of, nipping that in the bud, and either going out for a walk and or just cutting cords or just sending that energy back to them and like, no, that I'm just making more of a priority. So I don't know if it's different, but I just feel like I have to have amp up that kind of self-protection stuff with what people are throwing around if they get upset.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. And what is the best advice you've ever gotten, or your favorite quote, whichever you want to pick?
Okay, I love this quote. Any disaster can become a blessing. Any blessing can become a disaster, and there's always a better way.
Mm, I love that. And what is the best thing you've ever been gifted?
Um, my son, I don't know, not an every day, but overall, that was a big blessing to have him.
I love that. I love that. All right. All right. As we're wrapping up, so what is next for you? What's the next thing you're really excited about?
Well, I'm taking this course and I'm decided to get out there. I'm working with Speakers Lab. I want to get out there as a speaker and a workshop presenter. So I'm going through like how to do that, how to get out and how to be that. And that is really stretchy for me too. But I don't know, why not? What am I going to do? Just sit around and grow old and have more gray hairs or white hairs? I'm just not going to do that. So that's my next thing I'm really interested in. If anyone in your audience know some IT people, I would love to come and talk to IT people about mindfulness and how to take care of yourself. And I even some of IT friends say that that's a big deal at a lot of conferences and a lot of people go to that. So if you can make an introduction, I'm here.
Absolutely. Yeah. No. And you have a great message to share, so I'm sure that'll be wonderful, and a lot of people will be benefiting from that very soon. And then, where can people find out more about you, more about your company?
Sure. My business is Jewel Consultancy, Jewel consultancy.com. Or you can Google my full name. It's just right there, Arlene Cohen Miller. There's a lot of Arlene Millers, but if you click going in there, you'll find me on all the social media stuff. So, yeah. And I don't hide my phone number or my email address like some people do. So it's easy to text me or to email me or call.
Awesome. All right. And so as we're wrapping up, is there anything you want to leave our listeners with?
Um, yeah, I think it's really important to take the time to be kind, patient, and tolerant with ourselves. We have these busy lives, we have families, we have friends, we have kids, whatever we have, dogs or pets. Um, and we just have so much going on. And it's not easy to be in this world and wear all those hats and spin all those plates because families can't afford to have just one person working anymore. So it's really important to find space to be kind, patient, and tolerant with ourselves. And when we start bringing that to ourselves, then we can begin to bring it to other people. It does bring in gratitude, but it's just like, am I being kind to myself right now? Just ask yourself that question if you start, getting wound up.
Awesome. All right. With that, be kind, patient, and tolerant with yourself. And until next time.